this video, we want to discuss the topic of the process of social development and friendship formation. One of the main objectives of this lesson is to help us to understand how do we learn how to connect with other people socially, and how do we go about making friends? What does that process look like? And it's my hope that as we end this video, we'll have a better understanding of this topic, and we'll learn how to practically apply this to the clients we're currently seeing who are children who are in this process right now of learning how to connect with others. As we begin, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to reflect on a childhood relationship that you had. I want you to think about what that friendship was like, what kind of things you did, and what you talked about. And I also want you to think for a second, do you still have contact with that friend? As I think about this question, I think about a good friend of mine named Ethan. I've known him since the third grade. I think we had probably one of the best friendships anyone could have. He was the best man in my wedding, and I actually ended up performing his wedding for him. And as a children, we spent much time together. We rode bikes almost all the time. We went fishing together, got in a lot of trouble together. We talked about girls. We did lots of great things together. And that was a friendship that I have invested a lot of time and energy into. And even to this day, I still have contact with my friend Ethan. And many people, as you listen to this, you may be thinking about someone who you're close to, someone you've had a great amount of time built with them, and the relationship you built with them, and think about a friendship you have. And I hope as we go throughout this lesson today, you'll be able to think about that friendship and begin to reflect on how did this relationship get where it is today. And I think as you look at some of the ingredients of that relationship and how it got there, this material will become a lot more practical to you. One thing we want to look at first of all is what we call peer sociability. We want to look and see how do infants begin to connect with people from an early age. And this first slide here talks about from age 3 to 4 months old that children begin to look and touch other infants. They may not end up having a lot of connection with them. They might not spend a lot of time with them. But one thing they want to do is be in an observation mode. They're in a part of their life where they're trying to learn everything they possibly can about their environment. The new smells that are out there, the new things for them to look at, things for them to touch. And so when they see other infants, they're in a place where they want to be able to look at them and touch them because this is something new to their environment that they are not used to. And so at this point, parents may be setting up play dates, things of that nature, and the kids may not necessarily play with each other that much. But one thing you will see is they're doing a lot of observation. They are learning from their environment. And hopefully they're in a good environment and they're learning good and healthy and positive things during this time period. But that's not necessarily the case for all children. But in this 3 to 4 month old stage, they are at the process of looking and touching other infants. At the 6 month old stage, we see the children begin to babble with each other. As a parent, this is a very neat stage to see. Obviously, they don't know a language by any stretch of the imagination, but they do have some way of communicating with each other. They're using small talk with each other, going back and forth, making noises, making sounds, and at least from their perspective, they are communicating with each other. They're building some social networks with each other, even though language acquisition has not fully occurred yet. And so it's neat seeing that process. Then we step from the 12 to 18 month old range when they have more coordinated interactions. Some of the play or some of the peer sociability you see will be more object centered. Where you may have two kids and they may be playing with a ball during that time period. They may roll the ball back and forth between each other, and all their play is focused specifically on that one ball. They may not necessarily be connecting with each other that way, but that ball or whatever the object is they're playing with, that's the one thing that brings them together during that time period. And so you do see some simple interaction going on. Obviously, there's not any conversation going on, but you do see kids growing a little bit closer together during this time period because they have an opportunity to play with other individuals and to have some type of shared goal in between them. Now, obviously, this doesn't, in their mind, it's not leading towards something long term, but for this 4 or 5 minute period or however long these kids are playing together, this object centered play as they have builds a small relationship for them during that time period. And then from the 18 to 24 month stage, we see what we call complementary interactive, where you see two kids maybe mirroring each other in the things they're playing with. So you may have one little girl over here playing with her doll, another girl playing right beside her with her doll. And even though they may not necessarily be playing with each other, doing the exact same thing with each other, they may be in a group together doing the same thing separately. And so they complement each other. The things that they're doing are kind of mirroring each other. But this is their beginning stage of beginning to learn how to be sociable, how to be around other people. And so it's important during this time period from age 3 months up to age 24 months that children have an opportunity to be around other kids. And so, whether your kid is being kept at home or being homeschooled, or whether or not they're being in a daycare, we want to make sure our kids have the opportunity to be around peers of their own age. So, whether it's a church group or whatever the case may be, finding time for them to be around other people, even at the earliest stages of life, help them in the future as they begin to learn how to build their relationships. And so, this is something that we'll continue to come back to in this lesson. This next little slide here talks about Selman's stages of friendship. Mr. Selman, or Dr. Selman, is a psychologist, and he's a graduate of Boston University, and he's currently a professor at Harvard University. And what he's done here is given us what we call these 5 stages of friendship. And in these stages, and just kind of like any other stages we'll look at and study, what we'll notice is sometimes these stages may overlap, and sometimes children may go back and forth in these stages. But what we see here during this time period, he's kind of given a good model of what kind of friendship these children are building at these different stages. And in stage 0 is defined as momentary playmateship. This is from age 3 till 7. And what happens here, you see a close friend, or what a kid considers to be a close friend, is someone who may live nearby them and a child who's playing with at that moment. And so this may not be someone they are long-term friends with for the rest of their lives, but this is who they're playing with at that very moment. See, kids at this stage don't have an ideology of some type of long-term enduring relationship. They think of things in more an event setting. So, for example, in the stage 0, I may remember at my sixth birthday party, little Susie came to that party, and so I remember her because of the situation that happened at the party. And so when I see her again, my reference point for her is once again that party in which we both partook of, the party we both were at. And so we see this the playmates we have is built upon moments. It's built upon specific situation I find myself in. So maybe I ate lunch with this kid at McDonald's one day. We played together on the playground on a swing set this one day. But we remember these instances where this person continues to show up over and over again. So this is the beginning steps of friendship. We see them in different scenarios, different places, and we put these small situations together, and this helps us to begin to see what friendship looks like. In stage 1, what we have from age 4 to 9 is what we call one-way assistance. And the way we go about defining a friend is someone who does something that pleases you. So, for example, if I at school and it's during lunchtime and a kid brings me a cupcake and gives this cupcake to me, they are assisting me. They're doing something that helps me. It helps me to feel better about myself. And so instantly this kid thinks this person is my friend because of their ability to do something for me. And so we're growing now from stage 0, where it's more just like momentary type of situations, to a situation where this kid is actually able to receive something from the other kid. And so they get to know people better and better the more kids do for them. And so initially this may sound a little bit selfish, but once again, this is the way Selman defines the second stage, or stage 1 of friendship. And stage 2 is what we call two-way assistance, and this is from age 6 to 12. And this is what we call where kids finally have a new awareness of interpersonal relationship, where friendship becomes reciprocal. Because what happens is they're doing something for me, and I'm able to do something for them. But once again, this is not a long-term type of relationship. It's still geared towards specific situations. So I may be able to think back to a time, speaking of my friend Ethan, where it may have been someone's birthday, or this could have been a day where we both were having fun to each other. I bought him a gift and he bought me a gift as well. And we're able to exchange those. And so we are helping each other out. And so because we remember that situation where we both receive something from that, that two-way assistance is being built. And so Selman says in this stage two, friendships are continuing to be built, but now it's something is more reciprocal. I'm getting something from you, you're getting something from me, and we're starting to learn that now it's not just about me, it's about what I can give, but also what I can receive. Then we go to stage three, which we call intimate, mutually shared relationship. And this is from age 9 through age 15. And we see this in this stage, children begin to reflect on intimacy and mutuality, but also they look at this as being a continuing relationship. Remember, stage 0 through stage 2, we're thinking about instant, just one or two situations in which they can remember. But in stage 3, we're sharing things with each other and we're looking more towards being together in a longer term relationship. And so this is a stage where you start to see boys and girls talking more about having a boyfriend or a girlfriend because they're both investing in this relationship and they look at this as being a continuing relationship. So there's a closeness that's built with this. There's a mutually shared connection they have with each other. And so you see kids once again pairing off here because they are in a relationship, or as they say, with someone else. And then stage 4 is what we call autonomous interdependent friendship stage. And this is from age 12 and up. What happens in this stage is perspectives can be shared between two people on common interests and deeper feelings. And perspectives among people from a certain network, which in turn become generalized. And what I mean by this is, what happens in the situation is now I begin to choose my friends based on things that we have in common. Not only do I look and see how do we help each other and is this relationship going to be long term, but I want to see what do we have in common with each other. Do you like to ride bikes? Do I like to ride bikes? Do you like to play video games? Do I like to play video games? Do I want to be a doctor in the future? Do you want to be a doctor in the future? We begin to look and see what things do we have common, and we begin to go for a deeper level of relationship, where we're trying to find out more about this person. What makes this person tick? How do we connect with them on a deeper level? And that's a big concern. And I think it's interesting, this stage 4 is something that we really never get out of if we make it to that stage of friendship. Because I'd imagine most adults, we're at a place in our lives where we're trying our best to figure out how do I connect with someone on that deeper level. I don't want to just simply know the surface level things about them. I want to go into a deeper level with them. And so Selman says at this stage 4, this begins around age 12 and continues because we're trying to begin to form our own network of friends based on common interests that we have. And so that kind of gives us a little small picture of what the stage of friendship look like. Now on this next slide here, we are looking at Mildred Parten's type of 6 different types of play. And what Dr. Parten does here is gives a picture of how play ends up developing over time, especially beginning with young children, and how that continues to grow as they get older. And the first type of play is described as unoccupied play. And this is when the child is relatively stationary and appears to be performing random movements with no apparent purpose. What happens here, the kids just simply learning how to play. And obviously they'll do this by themselves. They may, grab the piece of paper and put into a ball. Or they may take the ball and maybe roll it a little bit. But what they're trying to do is to figure out, how do I interact with this object that I have in front of me? And this is a neat part of play because they're learning this for the first time. They're not really sure exactly how this is supposed to work. They really hadn't had any examples of what play looks like. But this is a beginning stage because they're unoccupied. They're learning, okay, how do I spend my time in this world? And so learning about play here. The second stage is what we call solitary play. And this is when the child is completely engrossed in playing and does not seem to notice other children, and this usually happens between the age of 2 and 3 years old. Have you ever seen a kid where they're playing so deeply by themselves that the world around them could be falling apart, the house could be on fire, but they don't care because they're in the midst of play? And it's neat to be able to see kids at this point because they're learning, how do I be by myself? How do I spend my time by myself away from the world? And so this solitary play is really important for them because this helps them to gain a little bit of independence. It helps them know what their boundaries are. It helps them know what they're good at as well. And so they may not even be playing with anybody whatsoever, and say they choose to play by themselves. Now, obviously, at some point, we want them playing with other children, but I think it's good for them to learn how to play solitary, how to play with themselves, and to learn from themselves things they're good at and things they're not good at. The third one is what we call onlooker play. And this is when a child takes an interest in other children's play, but they do not join in. They may ask questions or just talk to other children, but the main activity is to simply to watch. And what's going on in their mind at this time period is they're looking to see what's going on outside of me. How does this other kid get enjoyment? And so they may be watching another kid ride their bicycle who may be older than them. Or they may see some kids who are playing jump rope or something like that. But what they're doing, they're sitting there and they're learning from their environment. They know how they play. They know what brings them enjoyment. Now they're looking around to see, how do other people get enjoyment? And so they learn so much from watching other people, and they're asking those why questions. They're trying to figure out what's going on. How do they fit into a part of this? Will they enjoy this or not? And so this onlooker play is a good way for them to be able to learn how to expand their repertoire, what they do to have fun, and learn different ways for them to play. The fourth one is what we call parallel play. And this is when the child mimics other children's play but does not actively engage with them. So, for example, you may have two preschool kids playing in the floor side by side with each other, and they could be playing blocks, but they're building their own separate houses. And so they're playing right beside another kid. No, they want to be in a group, maybe two or three other kids, but they're really not paying attention to what the other kid is doing. But they want to be doing the same thing. And so I might have these two kids there. They're both playing with Play-Doh. They're both making these Play-Doh snakes, whatever the case may be. And they're having their own fun together, but separately. And so they're kind of paralleling each other in this type of play. And so this is just another way for them to be able to learn play. Next thing is what we call associative play. And this is when the play gets a lot more interested, and when the kids get more interested in each other than the toys that they're using. And this is the first category that involves strong social interaction between the children while they play. And so now that they're getting away from parallel play, now they're more interested in that kid. They want to know, what can that kid do? I've seen how I know how to play. I've seen what they like to play, but what can I do with this kid now? And so the focus gets away from the toys so much now it's kind of focusing on getting that social relationship. I want to get to know that kid. I want to know what makes that kid tick. What does that kid have that's exactly like me? What's different about us? And so this is an extremely important part of this child learning new techniques in their own life, because now they're not only learning how to play, they're learning how to connect with other people. And the last one is what we call cooperative play. And this is when kids enter play, but they may do it more as a group and start to become more competitive. You know, back when I was younger, the big thing to do was to play kickball. Absolutely loved kickball. And the important part of kickball, you couldn't play by yourself. You had to have a team. And now kids are at this area and at this stage where they're wanting to be more team oriented. It's not just about me. It's not just about my other friends. I'm looking for other people who do the same thing as me. And so team sports become something that's really, really big. And so you may have the kid that's playing t-ball or basketball, whatever the case may be, but the good thing about this is they're learning how to play, but they're also learning how to socialize with bigger groups of people. And we see this is something that continues to develop throughout time, and it grows as they get older. And so these are just a 6 type of play that's been described by Dr. Parten. Next, we want to look at the progression of play. That play, the way in which it begins, it starts one way, but it also ends up ending out totally in a different perspective. And the first thing is what we call pretend play. Now, I'm going to make a confession to you. When I was younger, I really enjoyed pretend play. I even had two imaginary friends. One was Trixie and one was Dixie, and they were imaginary friends, and they were twins. And for some reason, I just really enjoyed twins, I guess, at that age. And so, a lot of kids you see, they will go through this pretend stage where they may have imaginary friends, but their minds are just working overtime. They like to build forts in their bedroom, things of that nature, or the tree house, or whatever the case may be, but they have a very vivid imagination and they are pretending so much. And so I think at this time and stage for the kids, you want to encourage them in their creativity. If they are want to learn more, to grow more in their play, it's okay to allow them to pretend. It's okay to allow them to have those imaginary friends because this is helping them to learn how to socialize with other people and learning how to play. The second thing is what we call social pretend. And now the pretending goes from just simply being by myself to pretending with a group. I can remember as a kid playing cops and robbers. Now, obviously, we weren't really cops and robbers, but we had two different groups. There'd be the robber kids and there'd be the cop kids, and we would play all day long. And we would learn how to fit into our specific roles, whether you're the cowboy, the Indian, or whatever the case may be. We found our role and we learned how to fit into that role. And that once again showed us how to once again connect with other people to build a social relationship with someone else. And this third type of play is what we call ruled governed. And this is when we begin to have more concrete rules in the way we play. And so, for example, if we're playing tag, there's always one person that is it. And there has to be certain boundaries. You know, you can't cross the tree or you can't go across the road because that's out of bounds. And so kids are really very much involved in building up these rules and giving themselves some boundaries, which is a good thing. They're learning boundaries at a very early age, and we want them to continue to do that as they get older. But we see this rule governed play helps them to learn that there are boundaries in life. There are certain rules you have to follow. There's good, there's bad. And this is another thing that builds into the children learning how to be more social in their play. Next, we'll look at friendship formation. That as you learn to build friends, there's some things that are kind of going on inside of our head as we go about choosing our friends. And one factor that is really important in friend formation is having friends that we have common ground activities with. Think about the friends you have right now. There's probably something that you guys or you women or you people have in common together. Whether it's you like the same type of music, maybe you enjoy drinking coffee, maybe you work at the same place. Wherever the case may be, you have something that brings you together. Maybe you're at the same life stage where you both have children around the same age, but there's something that's bringing you guys together and there's some common ground activity that you have that gives you a great association with each other. Another thing that when it comes to friendship formation that builds into that is having a greater skill at resolving conflict. That kids who know how to resolve conflict have more friends. Now, why do you think that is? I think this is the case because if I have someone who I can get along with well, they're never arguing with me, they're never fussing with me, then I want to spend time around them. But if I'm constantly having to fight with them, if I'm constantly having to have an argument with them, then I don't want to spend time with them. And so kids pick up on this really early. So the more that they are learning how to resolve conflict, the better it will be for them as they try to begin to build friendships. Third thing we look at is they're better at exchanging information or simply knowing how to communicate. That when I'm able to get a thought from my own mind and give that to someone else and they're able to understand that, they're able to communicate with me, then I'm more likely to spend time with them. And so kids love to exchange information. It can be on just about any topic, whether it's some video game or trading cards or whatever the case may be. If I can exchange information with you and you understand me and I understand you, we have a lot better chance of becoming friends. And so we see those who are able to exchange information better are more likely to be a part of a friendship. And also those who engage in more self-disclosure. One big thing about friendship, I don't care if you're an adult or a child, is that each of us want to be able to trust other people. And if I can't trust you, then I'm not going to be friends with you. And so you see children at this stage where they're sending out information about themselves or communicating it. And as they do that, they want to know, can I trust you? And so maybe I tell you a small secret and you listen to that and you listen to it more and you engage with me on that and you keep that secret. That encourages me to tell you more things. And then you trust me with your information. And the more we trust each other with information and we continue to self-disclose, the closer we become and a lot more likely we are to have a friendship form together. And so if our kids that we have or that we're working with, if they don't have kids, they have things in common with it around. If they don't know how to resolve conflict, if they can't know how to communicate or self-disclose, those will be the kids who have a lot harder time forming friendships with other people. Next, we want to look a little bit at the topic of popularity and peer acceptance. Now, there's a study out there it's called sociometrics, and it pretty much is a way of determining who is liked and who is disliked in a group. I have a big interest in sociology, and this is one of those things that you will see a lot in sociology, is learning how do you know whether or not you're liked in a group. And one thing that a process that we go through all the time is these three sociometric techniques that whether it's consciously or unconsciously, we go through this process when we're trying to determine who it is we'll spend time with. And so one question or one thing we do in our own minds is this thing called nomination, where we start to begin to wonder who would I most likely spend time with and who would I most likely play with. And kids are going through that process all the time, and even as adults, we go through that process. That if I only have a certain amount of time left in my day, who would I want to spend that time with? And so we may end up having a list of 4 or 5 people's names pop into our head that we may be acquaintances with, but for one reason or another, we begin to take names off that list because 1 or 2 names begin to rise to the top. And these are people that we nominate or the people that we want to spend more time with. Another thing we end up doing is what we call a rating scale, that we begin in our own mind to determine what characteristics that will we use to rank our friends. Which one of our friends has the best TV? That may be one of our characteristics we look at. Or which one of our friends has the prettiest sister? Or which one's mom can cook the best? I mean, there's many things we go through, and we rate those things. And as we come up with a set of characteristics, this will help us kind of figure out who we want to spend time with and also who's the most popular in our groups we hang out with. And also we will do this thing called paired comparison. We'll begin to determine which of my friends are the most like me. And so I may have gone through the nomination and rating scale process. Now, maybe down to 2 people figuring out which one I want to spend time with. And then that eternal question comes up, which one's the most like me? Which one do I have the most in common with? And so like I said, whether it's conscious or unconscious, we go through this process all the time, figuring out who's popular and who will we accept as one of our peers. Another thing we want to look at when it comes to this friend formation is peer acceptance. And some studies out there, it looks at social status. There's 4 different groups that children usually fall into when we look at social status. The first one is what we call the popular social status. And these are the kids who are well liked by all. Now, I imagine right now as we're going through the slide, you may be thinking when you were growing up, you may have been in one of these groups, and as you got older, you may have actually switched to a different group. But for some people, they may have still be in the same group. But, this popular group, we know who those people are. Those are one who seems like everybody likes them. It seems like nothing bad ever happens for them. They're always the luckiest people in the world. Great things always happen for them. And so we end up considering them to be the popular people because everyone likes them. The next group is what we call the neglected group. And these are kids who simply they don't interact with other people much at all. People don't say anything bad about them. People don't really say anything positive about them. They're kind of like the lost person. As I go back every once in a while, I look at my high school annual, I'll see people's pictures who I had simply forgotten about totally because I just didn't realize a person even graduated with me or I forgot about them. And it was nothing negative I had against them or anything. It's just they're one of these neglected people. They're someone who may have been shy. They may not have interacted with many other people. And so nothing big about them happened that has put them in my memory. And so they end up falling to this group of neglected people because I just don't really think about them. I have nothing positive or negative to say, but they're not thought of that much. And this third group is what we call the rejected. And these are people that are actively disliked. And there's so many different reasons why this could be the case. Maybe it's a weight issue. Maybe it's a race issue. Maybe it's a height issue. Maybe they stink. We don't know. But for some reason, these kids are actively disliked. And they realize this and they know it. The kids that fall into this category, they know that they're actively disliked. It's not something that comes as a surprise to them because people all are simply rejecting them all the time. So this may end up being a group of people who ends up turning to your bullies, or these may be the kids who are actually getting bullied as well. But they realize that they have been rejected for one reason or another. And then that fourth group is what we call the mixed review or the controversial group. Because people say positive and negative things about them. You may have remembered some good things and some good times with them, but you also remember some bad times with them as well. And so they're kind of controversial. Depending on who you talk to, they can either be good people or bad people or either one of those categories. Now, as I look at these four categories here, and as I think about my clients, I will imagine most of our clients will possibly want to be in the popular group, or maybe even in the neglected group. I can see being in one of those groups as being a good thing because either everybody likes me or people don't necessarily don't deal with me that much. But I think out of this four, I would never want to be in the rejected group because if I'm in the rejected group, that means I'm getting attention, but I'm getting attention that I simply do not want. And so kids find themselves in these different types of groups throughout their lifehood, even as they become adults. They find themselves in one of these four groups of people. And so helping the students you're working with or your clients you're working with figure out which group they're in and how to deal with that could be a very crucial part of your counseling. Next thing we'll look at what determines whether or not you are popular. Now, I'm not sure if you remember the TV show Family Matters. There was a guy on there named Steve Urkel. He pretty much, I think I looked just like him in high school, if I'm not mistaken. And so I don't think I fell into the category of the popular people in my high school. But one of the things that helps us determine whether or not we are popular or other people feel like we're popular is our social skills. Do I have the ability to connect with other people? That people are judging us constantly, whether it's on our personality or whatever the case may be, but we have to have some type of social skills. That way people will want to connect with us. One thing I've always found interesting, I've worked with a lot of couples or people who are single and they're wanting to get married or they can't find the right person. And one of the things is that when I look at their list of the things they're looking for in a person, these are things that they don't possess themselves. They want a good dresser, they want someone with a great personality, someone that's nice, all these great things, but they don't have any of these categories or any of these, they possess none of these characteristics themselves. And so part of being popular, at least from what studies are showing, is that we have to have these social skills. We need to be actually giving of ourselves and being able to learn how to connect with other people, and people see that and they want to be a part of that. Also, intellectual ability does play into popularity. Whether you figure you're on the smarter side of that or the not so smart side of intellectual ability, people find themselves grouping together with other people based on how smart we think we are. And also, physical attractiveness plays a big part in popularity. If you look at TV commercials, you don't necessarily see what we would consider an ugly person doing TV commercials. And why is that? It's because we are drawn to physical attractiveness. That's what's popular, that's what's good, that's what's cool, and that's what we want to be around. And so you see many people changing themselves to become physically attractive because if I am dressing or acting a certain way or look a certain way, then people will be drawn to me. And whether it's right or wrong to think that way, we still fall into that trap. And so physical attractiveness plays a big role into people figuring out how popular they are. And so kids fall into this trap of trying to wade through these three things of social skills, intellectual ability, and physical attractiveness. And once again, we want to be able to help them, to guide them these things aren't necessarily bad, but learn how to approach these things in a healthy manner. Another thing, when we look at adolescent relationships, three things that kind of help support those things. One thing is that as adolescents, they build relationships. They want people who's going to support them. Whether it's a bad idea or not, they're looking for someone who is going to be there to help them out, to support them in the things that they're trying to do. And if I can find at least one or two people that support me, that when I tell them things about myself, and they've got my back, and they're helping me to reach better goals myself, these are people as an adolescent I'm going to be spending more time with. Also, when it comes to conflict, people that I don't have much conflict from, I'm going to spend time with them. Kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that the less pressure I'm feeling or less stress I'm feeling from this relationship, the more likely I'm going to join with you in a relationship. And the third thing is peer pressure. Now, we've been hearing about this for years, but the less peer pressure a child feels in a relationship, the more likely they're going to be a part of that relationship. And so if a kid is feeling all the time like they're being made to do something they don't want to do, they usually will reject that relationship, whether it's with their parent or with another peer. But if they feel comfortable connecting with you, they feel comfortable in what you're asking them to do, they're a lot more likely to spend time with you. And so I think helping our children and helping our clients learn about support and conflict and peer pressure would give them a good insight to the relationships that they are a part of. Now, in these last a couple of slides here, what I want to do is kind of to help us look a little bit at how kids or how adolescents, how they end up forming themselves in groups of people, and how that ends up affecting them. Now, this term clique sometimes gets a very negative rap when we hear the word clique, but for the purpose of this lesson, I think we want to look at clique as being something that's actually a positive thing. Then we think about cliques, we want to describe them as a small group of friends who see each other frequently. So this could be kids from their same classroom, it could become from their youth group at church, or whatever the case may be, but this is a small group of people who do things on a regular basis with each other. And they're defined by common activities. So, for example, it could be like there's friends that I made in Boy Scouts. We see each other all the time. We have a common activity with each other, and they provide some type of social context for our interactions. And so, say for instance, I have a group of friends who we go hunting with. Guess what we may talk about? We may talk about guns and ammunition and new camo, things like that. But it provides a social context for our interactions. It doesn't mean we're better than any other group of people. It just means that we have this one thing that brings us all together. And also with these cliques, it begins late in childhood, usually with same-sex cliques, where you see girls, where they, well, more likely than boys, will find themselves falling into these cliques. Maybe there's something they find that they spend a lot more time with. Maybe it's Girl Scouts or activity they like doing together. But they find themselves going together more and depending more on each other in relationships. Where guys, it's possible that to happen, but girls are a lot more sociable, it seems like, than guys when it comes to group type of activities. And the last thing we look at is crowds. And these are vaguely defined groups based on reputation. Now, reputation could be either a good reputation or a bad reputation. I remember growing up as a kid, and my parents would always tell me to be careful which crowd I run around with. Because it says the crowd you run around with says a lot about who you are as a person. And so if you have a group of people who are all the time stealing, getting in trouble, things like that, if you spend time with them, guess what? You're going to be doing some of the exact same things. You're going to be involved in organizing social activities, doing things that feeds into the same things that they're doing. Also, what happened with these crowds, sometimes this helps bring both genders together. So whether it's a social club or fraternity or whatever the case may be, you see people from both sexes coming together based on their reputation, and they're doing things together. And so, this also happens. We end up labeling these groups. I was probably not probably, I know for a fact, I was in a nerd group growing up, and so everybody knows what group they were in. It's not very hard, whether you're the jockey people or you're the nerd, maybe one of the popular people. You knew precisely what group you fell into, and everyone else did too. One thing I found interesting, I went to one of my high school reunions a couple of years back, and it was interesting to see that the people who hung out in high school still hung out today in their groups. So the ones who thought they were cool in high school, they still think they're cool, even though they may not be cool. But they find themselves still going around these same circles and these same crowds because it's still based on this reputation that's seared into their head. And these crowds, they do tend to last for a while, but we see usually later in high school, couples begin to form, which begins what feeds into their own relationships they have down the road. And so these cliques and crowds are important parts of growing up in socialization. And so they don't necessarily have to be a negative thing. So how do we wrap this up? Well, my final word is this, is that healthy social development must be encouraged during childhood so that healthy adult relationships can form. I believe as therapists, this should be something we should be spending as much time as possible with our clients, helping them to know what does a healthy social relationship look like. Because they can learn how to do this before they get to high school and before they get out on their own as adults. This will help them to have many strong and healthy relationships down the road. But if they never learn how to connect with other people, it's going to be very difficult for them down the road to learn how to connect with other people. And so for me, social development is I think one of the most important things we should be spending time with as we spend time with our clients. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this training looking at social development. And if you have any questions, please just contact me. Thank you very much.